Look, from the outside, looking at West Ham, apart from the fact they won the trophy last season, as you've just said, they're through the quarterfinals of the Europa League. So potentially they could win that and be in the Champions League next season. They're around the European place now, what, seventh? So potentially that could be enough, particularly if it's 5 spots for the Champions League. So they could get either the Europa League or the Conference League. So from the outside, you think it's great, but of course, those supporters who are paying, a hell of a lot of money to watch West Ham, and I think you've got to respect what these fans say. Just don't enjoy watching a lot of the matches. I think tonight was, as you'd expect, it's a huge game for West Ham. It's their biggest game of the season in terms of they sort of consider Spurs their biggest rivals. Obviously, it's a weird rivalry, isn't it? Because Tottenham don't really feel just the same way about West Ham. But I think Moyes will end up leaving in the summer.
Really?
I do. Yeah, I just think that. I know that offer's on the table, but I think that there's just no pleasing some West Ham fans in his eyes. I think whatever happens, I think he'll get another job. But obviously, West Ham's owners will be desperate for him to stay because I think he's done a really good job. Even though he's had a reasonable amount of money to spend. Look at West Ham are now. Can you compare that to where Everton are and what they've spent over the last few years? But the majority of supporters do want him out, I think.
It's fascinating, Jason. You're nodding along there. Do you envisage David Moyes leaving? Is that of his own volition because of the lack of appreciation? And how pivotal could that be in West Ham's future? Could they look back and regret that if it happens in the summer?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be really one to watch towards the end of the season. What I'm fascinated by is, obviously, I think it was in end of January, that David Moyes said, yes, there's an offer on the table. What I would love to know is what is that offer? Is it an offer that he finds acceptable? I would question that. I think possibly he's not been offered what he wanted. I think he wants reassurances also that the club is behind him, that the fan base is behind him. I think he's found it very frustrating, the criticism that he's faced. I think it's been a very difficult situation for him. I think Charlie's probably right. I think if on balance, the club would want him to stay. But I don't think they're really pulling out all the stops at the moment to convince David Moyes. I think they're sort of waiting to see what happens with the rest of the season. So it is quite possible, as Charlie says, that I think David Moyes will walk away at the end of this campaign and claim that he's been a little bit underappreciated at West Ham and consider what he's delivered at the club. And that will be quite an interesting scenario in itself because it then presents West Ham with an issue of where do they go from here? They've tried in the past to go for a more attacking, maybe a more flamboyant, maybe a more kind of attractive manager, and it hasn't necessarily worked for them. So there is always that element of be careful what you wish for. The counterbalance to that is that I do have some sympathy with the fans who look at a team that's got Paquetá, that's got Kudus, that's got Bowen, and doesn't always play attacking football. But it's just getting that right in terms of how you do that, and at the same time make sure you don't jeopardise the club. West Ham will never be in trouble under David Moyes, and they know that. So they've got that insurance policy of him, and he's delivered this trophy. So it's a really big issue going towards the end of the season now, whether or not he decides to stay, whether or not he gets the reassurances and the contract that he wants and he thinks he's worth, or whether or not he thinks, actually, no, I'll cut my losses and I'll leave now. And as Charlie says, I'll look for another job.